Hello. My name is Aili Huber, and I'm the director for Measure. And I wanted to take a minute to talk to you a little bit about some of what we've learned about Shakespeare by doing Shakespeare via Zoom. I've been thinking a lot about how my work is different on Zoom, and I've been reflecting on a time in 2019 when, for various reasons, I had to direct most of Pigeon Creek's Richard III via Skype. So the actors were all together in a studio, and then I was Skyping in. And when I was getting ready to do that, I was very cranky about it. And an advisor said to me, Aili, I think you're going to learn a lot about what directing is when you have to do it in this way. And she was right. And Richard ended up being a production that I'm immensely, immensely proud of and grateful to the company for the opportunity to direct that, even possibly, especially in the way that we ended up doing it. And so I've tried to have the same attitude about directing things on Zoom, that by being removed from the context that I usually work in, I'm learning a lot about what my work is and what my work means. When we think about Shakespeare, we typically kind of start with the words, right? We start rehearsal with text work, and if I'm teaching like a workshop or something, I'm definitely going, does everyone know what scansion is? And it's true that like the words are what we have with Shakespeare, but the words are an impulse that wants to be physical. When we speak these words, our bodies want to enact them. And not having that dimension has been really interesting. Especially, I think, working on Measure for Measure, which I think is one of Shakespeare's more kind of underwritten plays. There is a lot that happens in Measure that is never explicitly said. And so we kind of patch those holes with visual storytelling. We can show things like the relationship between people, depending on how close or how far they are apart on stage. We can communicate people's status by how they carry themselves in their bodies. We can show complex bits of plot by having somebody be like hidden in plain sight to the audience, but obscured to another character. We can use groupings of people to show you that person's important right now. These people you don't need to pay attention to in this moment. We can have people exchange a meaningful glance that communicates a whole lot. And on Zoom, we can't do that. In particular with Measure, the end of Measure is very famously not textual. And I'm going to stop here for just a second. I am about to do some real spoilers on Measure for Measure. So if you are someone who hates spoilers and you just want to like go into it fresh, you should stop watching right now. Okay, so for those of you who have remained, you may or may not know that the end of Measure for Measure is famously ambiguous. At the very end of the play, the Duke goes to Isabel, whose life plan was like to be a nun until her brother got put in jail. And he says, hey, I've saved your brother's life. And also, you want to marry me? How would that go? And that's where the play ends. That's it. Shakespeare kind of doesn't give us an ending. He gives us an opportunity. When I was thinking about doing this play in a physical setting, I had a very clear mental picture for how I was going to handle that ending and how I was going to hold space for these decisions. Because it's not just Isabel and the Duke that have a decision to make, it's also Angelo and Mariana have now forced into a marriage. Mariana has knelt and begged for Angelo and saved his life, but like Angelo maybe doesn't really want to be married to her. Now he has to deal with the fact that this woman begged for him to live. He has to like process that. Like, does that change him as a person? Does he think this is ridiculous? This woman's really stupid. Why did Mariana do it? What does it mean to love that courageously and or foolishly, right? So there's all of that. We don't get a conversation about that. Angelo never says to Mariana, like, thanks, that was great, or like, that was stupid, why did you do that? I said I would rather die. Meanwhile, we've got Claudio and his girl Juliet, who have just come back together after a really harrowing experience where he has been on death row and she has given birth. And so like they've both had this experience with like the doors of life and death, and they don't say anything to each other. Like nobody gets a conclusion in this play. And so I had this cool idea, which you'll have to come see the show. But I had an interesting idea for how to hold all of those decisions and all of those questions at the end. And that idea didn't work on Zoom because it had a lot to do with presence and space and breathing and energy between actors. I don't have that on Zoom. You can't make real eye contact on Zoom. And sometimes you get a little sense of that Holy Theater energy on Zoom, but like mostly you don't. So I am sad about not being able to do the end quite how I wanted it to. But I'm also really interested in what we came up with And how this worked was I described what my physical version would be to the cast, and Kat Hermes, who's a wonderful collaborator I've worked with a bunch, said, okay, well, here's an idea that kind of does that. And between her and Scott Lang, who's the music director, like, we've kind of got the shape of an idea that I hope will communicate some of what I'm trying to get across. And I think also that this work is opening a way for us to make an even better production next fall. I would be very curious to hear from anybody who watches this production on Zoom what you thought about how we managed to take all of the power and interest of physical storytelling and put it into this format that is just not the same thing. And if you see this production and then you come see us next fall, fingers crossed, please, 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 I would be really interested in hearing about what differences you noticed. I can't wait to hear from you, and I hope that you enjoy the show. Wear your masks. I want to do my work in person real soon. Thanks. Bye.